Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're kicking things off today with a topic that, honestly, even a couple of years ago sounded like pure sci-fi hype.
Right.
But here we are, early 2026, and it's very much a reality. We're talking about data centers in space.
And it is happening much faster than I think anyone really expected.
Sure.
The headlines focus on the engineering, which is, incredible.
Of course.
But the research we've pulled together for today, it suggests the real fight isn't about gravity, it's about jurisdiction.
That's the angle. That's what we want to dig into. Our main source is a paper from Johan Steyn, AI in Orbit, but we're also pulling in a reporting from The Guardian, Time, and some legal analysis from Jurist.
And two birds, yeah.
So the mission really is to figure out what happens to data sovereignty when the cloud is literally, floating above our heads. Because when you move a server 400 kilometers up, you might be leaving the law behind with it.
Or you're entering a place where the law is just incredibly blurry. Steyn calls it the gray zone. We're shifting from a world of, territorial borders to orbital mechanics, and our legal system just hasn't caught up.
Okay, but before we get into the legal weeds, let's just establish the why. Why do this at all? I mean, launching hardware into orbit is still eye-wateringly expensive.
It is. It's not trivial, but it really boils down to two things: resource scarcity on Earth and strategic resilience.
Okay.
We all know terrestrial data centers are hitting a wall. They are so thirsty. They use these colossal amounts of water for cooling, and that's becoming a huge political issue in places like Arizona.
And the power grid can barely keep up as it is. We saw all the brownouts last summer.
Exactly. So now look at the alternative. In space, you've got near constant solar power. That's the whole idea behind Google's Project Suncatcher.
Right.
You're not relying on Earth's aging grids. But more importantly, you have the vacuum of space.
The ultimate heat sink.
The ultimate heat sink. You don't need chillers or water towers. You radiate heat directly off the chips. So engineering-wise, it's elegant. It solves the resource problem.
But there's a strategic angle, too.
Oh, absolutely. If you're a global AI provider, do you really want your entire infrastructure to be at the mercy of, say, the Texas power grid or EU water regulations?
No, you want it totally independent, decoupled.
Precisely. In orbit, you are immune to terrestrial problems. That is the big resilience play.
But that decoupling isn't just physical, and this is where it all gets complicated. We saw StarCloud late last year. They successfully ran a pretty advanced AI model in orbit.
Yeah, that was a huge proof of concept. The chips work up there.
So the tech is ready, but if that server is processing my data and it's floating somewhere over the Atlantic, whose rules apply?
That is the multi-trillion-dollar question. I mean, the bedrock of space law is still the Outer Space Treaty of 1967.
Wow.
It was designed to stop nations putting nuclear weapons on the moon, not to handle GDPR compliance for a cloud company. It works on a principle of state responsibility.
Which is fine if it's like a NASA rover.
Right.
But it's a lot less clear when it's a private company's server farm.
Exactly. And Steyn's paper argues we're just walking straight into this jurisdictional spaghetti. He breaks the problem down into 3 layers where different entities can claim control.
Okay, let's walk through these because this is where the conflict starts to become really clear. So layer 1 is the operator.
Right. The company that owns and operates the hardware. So if Google or Microsoft launches a data center, they're U.S. corporations. The U.S. government is going to argue that the long arm of its law follows that hardware no matter where it is.
So if the FBI issues a warrant for data on a server in low Earth orbit and the operator is American, they have to comply.
In theory, yes. But what if it's a joint venture? Or the subsidiary that's actually running it is registered in Luxembourg for tax reasons? It gets murky very, very fast.
Okay, so corporate ownership is layer 1. Then there's layer 2, the ground segment. I love that line in the article. Data is not telepathic.
It's a great line because we talk about the cloud, but the data has to get there and back. It goes from your phone, through cables, to a ground station, a big antenna, and then it gets beamed up.
And that ground station is planted firmly on somebody's sovereign territory.
Exactly. And that territory has laws. So if the ground station is in Kenya, Kenyan telecom laws apply. If it's in Norway, Norwegian laws apply. So now you have a U.S. satellite
communicating via a Kenyan ground station.
And you have to ask, who has the right to intercept that data? The U.S. says it's our satellite. Kenya says it's our airwaves.
Wow. And we haven't even gotten to layer 3 yet.
Not even close. Layer 3 is the data subject, the person the data is actually about.
And the source material uses this South African hospital example. Let's play that out. So a hospital in Johannesburg processes patient records using an orbital AI.
Right. Super sensitive data. And under South African law, that data has very specific constitutional protections. Those rights don't just, vanish because the server's 400 kilometers up.
But here's the nightmare scenario, right? The U.S. government subpoenas that data from the American operator.
And the operator wants to comply. But the South African hospital says, whoa, hold on. Handing that over violates our privacy laws.
And the ground station in Kenya might have a totally different set of rules about exporting data.
You've got it. It's a three-way legal standoff. And Steyn argues this isn't just a headache, it's a sovereignty trap.
Okay, hold on. Sovereignty trap. What does that actually mean? What's the trap?
The trap is thinking that just because you have laws about data sovereignty, that you own your citizens' data, that you can actually enforce them. True sovereignty requires control. It requires the ability to audit.
But how do you audit a server that you can't physically touch? You can't just send in a team to inspect it.
You can't. You are completely reliant on whatever telemetry the operator decides to send you. You have to trust their code. So if you're a country running your critical infrastructure on a foreign company's satellite, have you actually kept your sovereignty? Or have you just outsourced it?
It's a black box problem on a massive scale. And this connects to that jurist commentary, right? They seemed really worried about the liability aspect.
They are, and they should be. The current liability rules are all about physical damage. If my satellite hits your house, my country has to pay. But what if my AI algorithm running in space crashes your stock market?
Or leaks your national security secrets.
Yes. There's no physical debris. It's informational damage. And current space law is basically silent on that.
So this is where we start getting close to the idea of space havens, like tax havens, but for data.
The Two Birds legal analysis definitely hints at that. Governments and big corporations see that this orbital infrastructure gives them choke point control. If you control the servers and you control the encryption keys, you effectively answer to no one. It's the ultimate offshore account.
Which brings us to what this means for everyone listening. Most of us aren't negotiating space treaties. We're running businesses. We're just trying to live our lives. So if I'm a CTO and StarCloud comes to me with a pitch for 50% cheaper compute because of all that free solar power, I'm going to be tempted.
Of course you are, but you need to be very wary. The biggest risk for businesses is dependency. We call it the kill switch risk.
Explain that.
If some big jurisdictional fight breaks out, say between the US and the EU over one of these services, a court could issue an injunction. That service could be throttled or just cut off entirely.
If your whole business runs on that service.
Your business just stops.
Yeah.
And you have no recourse. You can't exactly sue the satellite.
So the advice is, what? Just don't use it.
No, the advice is to be smart about it. Think in terms of a hybrid architecture.
Yeah.
Don't put your most critical data solely in orbit with no backup. Use space for burst compute, for training models, sure, but always keep a terrestrial lifeline.
Okay, so plan for outages, whether they're from solar flares or lawyers.
Exactly.
And what about for the rest of us, the citizens? The source material talks about this fear of innovation feeling like extraction.
This is a huge point, especially from the perspective of the Global South. There's a long history here, right? For centuries, physical resources were extracted from developing nations, processed elsewhere, and sold back as finished goods.
And now the resource is just data.
Exactly. The fear is that a country like South Africa just becomes a data mine. Their raw data gets beamed up to a satellite owned by an American or a Chinese company, processed into valuable AI, and then sold back to them as a service.
They become users of someone else's infrastructure, not builders of their own.
That's the critical distinction. If you are just renting, the landlord sets the rules. And this is why Steyn argues that developing nations need to get ahead of this now. They need to be negotiating really clear procurement rules.
Before they sign the contract.
Before they sign anything. They need to bake in data rights, auditability, and clear jurisdiction clauses. Because once that satellite is launched,
their leverage goes to zero. You can't go up there and repossess it.
Pretty much.
I want to circle back to something you said about the audit. The fact that nobody can physically touch the server. In cybersecurity, physical access is everything. If I can touch the machine, I own it.
It's the golden rule.
So does this make a space data center the most secure vault ever created, or the most dangerous, uncontrollable thing we've ever built?
And that's the paradox, isn't it? On one hand, yes, it's incredibly secure. No one can break in and steal the drives. It is physically air-gapped from Earth. But from a governance standpoint,
yeah,
it's terrifying. If that AI starts to behave in ways that violate ethics, or if the operator just decides to change the rules, how do you stop it?
You can't just go and pull the plug.
There is no plug. You can try to jam the signal, but that's an act of aggression. You can try to hack it, but you can't enforce the law with a warrant and a pair of bolt cutters.
It feels like we're building a layer of our civilization that is sort of disconnected from all the mechanisms we have to keep it civil.
That's a very good way to put it. We're exporting our capability, but we have not yet exported our accountability.
So where does this go in the next 5 years? Is this gray zone going to get cleaned up, or is it just going to get messier?
Oh, it gets messier. It always gets messier first. The tech will always outpace the lawyers and the diplomats. We will probably see the first major orbital data scandal before we see any kind of comprehensive treaty.
A scandal like a massive data leak.
A leak, or maybe a refusal to delete data. Imagine a right to be forgotten case where the operator just says, no, we're an international vacuum. We don't recognize your court's authority. That will be the moment of truth.
That feels almost inevitable.
I think it is. And that's why this conversation is so important right now. We have to redefine digital sovereignty to be about who controls access, not just where the data happens to sit.
You know, listening to all this, the tech part is actually the least interesting piece of the puzzle. The rockets and the chips.
Yeah.
They're just the catalyst. The real problem is human. It's political.
It always is. The rockets are just the delivery system for the policy problems.
So for everyone listening who's fascinated by this, but also feels a bit powerless, what should they be watching for? What's the signal in the noise?
Watch the contracts, not the launches. When your government or your bank or your hospital announces a big new partnership with a space data company, look for the fine print. Ask them, where does the liability sit?
Be the annoying person who asks, if this all goes wrong, which court do we sue in?
Exactly. Because if the answer is, we're not sure, or arbitration in Delaware for a satellite over Cape Town, that's a huge red flag.
This has been a fascinating look at how the final frontier is quickly becoming the final legal loophole.
And we are just getting started.
I do want to leave everyone with one final thought that's been nagging at me. We've talked about the data haven idea, this unreachable server.
The orbital pirate bay, yeah.
Exactly. But what if you flip that? If you create a place where no earthly law can fully reach, have you accidentally created the only place where true privacy can exist? Or have you just built the perfect place for the worst parts of humanity to operate without any consequences at all?
It's the ultimate dual-use technology. It can be a sanctuary or it can be a hideout, and it all depends on who's holding the keys.
And right now, it seems like the keys are just floating in zero-G, waiting for someone to grab them.
Let's just hope it's the good guys.
On that note, we're going to wrap. Thanks for listening. Keep your eyes on the stars,
Yeah.
but maybe keep a close hand on your data rights. We'll see you on the next deep dive.